Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. And Todd, welcome to the Widowhood.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I'd like to read some of your bio information before we get started. Is that okay?
Definitely.
My name is Todd. I am the founder and director of CARES Foundation. I grew up in a small community in Idaho where I learned the value of communication and the meaning of integrity. My mother and sister were killed when I was young, which has led me through life with a passion to help others. This has led me to start CARES Foundation, which is built on communication, trust, integrity, and helping others. Our key focus is to teach our teens and young adults to make better decisions to prevent unnecessary accidents and death in the future due to peer pressure, drinking, driving, and social media. The big key for me is to help those at risk make a good, educated decision about their future. I tell them that it is okay to make mistakes because that's how we learn. But I want to keep those mistakes to the ones we learn from, not the ones that last a lifetime, i.e., felonies. Here are a few goals we have. 1, help save lives through speaking to as many kids and adults as possible. Provide college scholarships to kids who have been directly affected by drunk driving, drugs use, etc. 3, host a summer camp for kids, which include counseling and having fun being kids. Number 5, the big goal that we are researching and raising funds for is to open a treatment facility or sober living home for teens and young adults. KS. And what does
Yeah.
KS stand for, Todd?
Well, that's just another part of the logo. We just have the K and the S of the CARES. So it's just like a round logo. Yeah.
But CARES, that word has some more meaning. Would you like to elaborate on that?
It does have meaning. Yeah, I will. Thank you for that. So I always knew that I wanted it to be named CARES Foundation. I've spoke off and on probably for 20 years. Just to kids that were part of a youth group or whatever would ask me to go to their driver's training class or something like that and speak. But when I started this up, I wanted to start speaking in a church that I grew up, or well, my dad and stepmom were going to, that people there knew my mom when she was alive. So of course they're elderly now. And so I talked to the minister, and it was crazy that I don't remember how it exactly came up. I think my dad was involved as well, that we figured out that his wife's grandmother was the first responder to my mom's wreck. And yeah, it was crazy. And I know at first I'm skeptical. I mean, I was 3 years old. It was in 1975. It was actually June 14th, 1975. They were killed. And so I'm like, well, first question was, is she alive? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And she's like 30 minutes from here where we were at there in Idaho. And I said, well, could I give her a call? Absolutely. So I gave her a call and she goes, yeah, I'd love to meet. So I met with her. And so I asked some questions. And again, I was still skeptical until I, started talking more. And my uncle, he was a deputy coroner in a neighboring county that she had worked with. So she knew our family name. So when she came on the scene and all of that, I don't know if she had met my mom before or not, but when she came on the scene, she goes, I'll never forget that. And she goes, I have never ever forgot your mom's that wreck because it was horrific. And I'm like, wow. Okay. I said, will you please tell me how the scene was. And so when she said she got there, she said there was an older lady that had gotten there first. And she said she must have been trained in first aid through 4-H or something because she had a whole ton of gauze. And she goes, everybody was wrapped in gauze, of course, except your mother and sister that were obviously deceased. And my brother was in the back seat. He survived, but arm was wrapped up, she said, in his head. Drunk driver was wrapped up. He was still alive. And so this starts to get a little bit tough for me even talking about it more. They hit driver to driver head on. He was in a F-150 pickup. My mom and my sister were in a 66 Chevelle Super Sport. And when they hit, it popped the hood up on my mom's car and drove it right through the windshield.
Mm.
And back in 75, kids didn't have booster seats and they stood up in the front seat.
Yes.
Well, the hood hit my sister right above the eyes and decapitated her. And she died instantly. Her death certificate says she died instantly. And so the first responder, she told me that your sister was sitting in the seat like you normally would sit in a chair, and the part was decapitated was sitting next to her. And then my mom was giving my sister a hug. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense because my mom's death certificate said she died moments after impact and that her chest was crushed by the steering wheel. So I really do believe that my mom had enough life in her that she looked over and saw my sister was dead, and she leaned over and gave my sister a hug. And that's a significant of the logo here. The Kare is my mom's name was Karen, so that's where that comes from. And my sister was Shelly, that's where that's where Cares comes from. And then a buddy of mine does logos, and he's like, man, I got to do something with the K. And so the significance of this leg of the K wrapping around the other is the significance of my mom giving my sister a hug in her last moment.
Right.
And there's the KS I was talking about. It's just another part of the logo. And on
Yeah.
around it, we have the communication and that and such.
Wow.
So that gave me the chills. In fact, it gives me chills right now. Thinking about my mom, my sister's last moments that, they were going to see God soon. And that it's just, I don't know, they were headed to 4-H to drop, my mom was headed to drop my brother and sister off to my grandmother's, and my brother was going to have a 4-H meeting that evening. And it was the day before Father's Day.
Mm.
And my sister, she was 6 years old, and she wanted to make pie crust with my grandmother because we were supposed to go there the next day for Father's. And so I stayed with my dad at the house. He was breaking a horse we had, and of course I was 3 years old. I wanted to hang out with Dad, so
Right.
But so yeah, that's the significance of the logo and a little part of the story.
Thank you. Do you mind if I ask some more about the part of the story because it is the inspiration for what you do?
Absolutely.
What do you remember 3-year-old Todd at that moment? Or is there any recollection or just stories you've heard people tell you over the years?
As far as like when my dad would told me, and as a 3-year-old, I really didn't. The only thing I have recollection of my mom and my sister. My mom walking down the hallway in the house we had,
Okay.
and then my sister like treating me like a I don't know, baby doll or something like that, like dressing me up or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of
Okay.
crazy like that. So that's really the only memories I have. Other than that, I've asked my dad about when he came on the scene because my grandmother kept trying to call my dad, I guess. And, of course, we're outside at that time. There's no cell phones.
I'm about to say, this is not a cell phone. This is you have to go to the house. And if you're out doing horse stuff, you're thinking, they'll leave a message. I'll get to that when I get back because my hands are dirty. I'm all up to whatever. So you're
Yep.
in that moment.
Yep, absolutely. So they, I don't know if he went inside for something or how that happened, but he answered the phone and his mom was on the other line, my grandma, and said, Karen and Shelly and Darren haven't shown up yet. So my dad goes, well, maybe they had car issues, so we'll go that way. So we got in a Jeep we had, I guess what my dad tells me, and we started driving there. And is about 3 miles out of town. And he come up on the wreck and he could see the back end of the car, so he knew it was our car. And tells me that he got out, and as he got out, one of the sheriff's deputies saw him, who was a friend of his, and basically tackled him to a degree and told him, you don't want to go up there, and that Karen and Shelly are gone, but that my brother was in the hospital and he needs us. And my dad said is what he remembers just collapsing on the pavement. And we didn't even, another officer from the town that my grandma was from drove us to the hospital. And so my dad doesn't even remember how his Jeep got home. He doesn't remember any of that. So it's just kind of a fog. So that's all he remembered. So when I got to talk to the first responder, that's where it really, I don't say it's kind of weird to say closure, but it kind of gave me more of that closure, warm feeling that I actually knew what their last moments were when they were in the car, I guess.
Those you make a very good point, Todd. And I know you say the word closure. We do have so many questions about the last moments of our loved one. So when we're able to get that information, it just fills in some blanks that we have. And that is a wonderful gift that you were able to receive.
Oh, absolutely. And I was able to record her talking a little bit. And
Mm,
so I will have that for the rest of my life. As long as something with the media doesn't kick off and, I lose my videos, but she's a wonderful woman. Her first name's Donna. She's
mm.
just wonderful, and this also, by her telling me that, it opened up my dad a little bit more because my dad has been really closed off about even talking about things. And he started telling me that the police officer that drove us to the hospital, my grandmother used to watch his little girl and myself after that. And I was telling the little girl that her dad killed my mom and sister. And so, my dad's like, man, he's thinking to himself, what do I have to do? And so he took me, he said, to the junkyard where they had the pickup of the drunk driver
Mm.
and showed me and said, this is the guy that killed your mom and your sister, not the police officer. So then I guess I finally took that as a 3-year-old. I don't remember any of that, and stopped saying that. Um, so yeah, that was kind of wild when he was able to express that. And he's given me a little bit more, and he gave me a big present when in 2012. I knew that my dad, because when we were as we went through that, back in that era, you didn't go to a counselor.
Say it again for the people in the back of the room.
Yep. Back in the 1975, people didn't go to counseling because they thought you were a weirdo. You were need to everything better need to be institutionalized. And so it was the old adage of just buck up, buttercup. That was the old adage. And so my dad just kind of put them, they're gone, we move on. And so we never really talked about my mom growing up. Um, I didn't really have a picture out of my mom. So just kind of like they weren't there anymore. And so that was super difficult for me. Um,
You
and
make a
even on my,
statement about just moving on, but do you feel like your dad moved on or was he stuck too and just didn't know how to continue
yeah,
living?
he's probably going to hear this and it's okay. But I don't think he's totally moved on as far as, and I don't know if you can totally move on when
I
your
was gonna say
wife
you
and your
move
daughter.
forward, but I don't
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't they're always with you. But I feel as if the era, um, people in that era didn't have the liberty to embrace their feelings, to be
right.
sad, to lament, to say, this person is no longer here in this world. I know you mentioned about them being with God, but we are having a loss for them in this world that we are in. And the management of the woman he had this covenant relationship and bore children with, and life was shattered the day before Father's Day. And just being validated in your feelings that it's fine, that those things, and that may be a gift eventually he would give himself, or just whether it's a quiet moment by himself or other things. And it's okay. He's learned to manage grief because I think you said your dad is remarried, he's continued to
Hmm.
live. But that's
Yeah,
and I think we all have a piece where if we had opportunity, we would go back and hug ourselves and say,
yeah,
it's I know it was hard, but I'm here
yeah.
with you.
Yep, for sure. Because I had issues. I mean, growing up, like I said, we didn't really talk about mom at all. And when I, I guess, I don't know what age I was when I could actually realize that I was feeling something, but didn't know what it was.
Okay.
And I was like one of the best football players in the state of Idaho growing up, and I was in the in crowd kind of thing. But there was always just like, I don't, not like that little person sitting on your shoulder, but just something there, there was like a weight that I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
Um, and it was just would bug me. And when I was probably, I don't know, my brother 6 years older than myself, and he was in a swing choir group, and when they would like go away or he'd go away, I would have a major problem with that.
Oh,
I didn't know how to handle it. And there was even one time that he left to go, and my dad and stepmom weren't planning on going to that, but I was having such a hard time being away from him that they took me to the event. So, and I had no clue what that was. There was even times that I remember that I would say I was sick. Not that I was lying because I didn't feel good, but it wasn't of medical, like cough kind of sick.
mhm.
I think that at the time, and I didn't know it at the time, I think was the anxiety that I had, and me leaving, my brother leaving, was the separation anxiety that I had no clue what it was until I went through counseling when I was 30, 31 years old.
Wow. That I am glad for you that you sought counseling. What difference did that make in your life?
I don't know. I think the counseling it was a necessity at the time. I'd went through a lot of things. I've unfortunately been married twice.
Okay.
Um, and I think part of all of that was part of how me growing up and what had happened. But after my second divorce, things happened with jobs and things like that. I got depressed, and it really hit me because I'm all about, I didn't want my first wife a divorce at all. I thought I would be married for 50, 60 years, and that's what I wanted, but it didn't end up that way. But after my second divorce, I was really depressed, and I was living in Oregon at the time, and my doctor said, well, why don't we get you on some medication that, help you through this time. I don't even remember what the medication was. So I started taking this medication, and I was the one in 250,000 that it made worse than
Oh,
better.
great.
And I had a shotgun in my mouth, and I almost committed suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember sitting there after I realized, I mean, I was not even, I don't feel like I was even there. And I feel like God kind of slapped me upside the head. I'm like, what are you doing? And so immediately, of course, put that down, and I called the doctor, the on-call person. It happened to be my doctor. And, and she goes, just stop the medication. You might have a little bit of effect from it, but just stop it and get around people, and, be in my office Monday. So I was, and I told her, I said, you know what? I'm done with this medication. I don't want to take any medication. I said, I grew up in a non-denominational Christian church. I believe in God. I want to go to a Christian counselor, and between God, the Christian counselor, and myself, I'm going to tackle this thing, and I'm going to figure out what it is. I'm tired of feeling this feeling. So that's kind of what led me to that. And the Christian counselor was wonderful. And we went, and mind you, at this time, with all these feelings that I was feeling, I was not the greatest person in the world. I was quick to anger. I was coaching high school basketball at the time, and I'm sure I would get short with not necessarily the players, but other people outside. So, if anybody listening that I hurt, I apologize for that during that time. But my emotions were just all over the place because in the counseling, we went clear back to 3 years old, and there was a process of mourning my mom and my sister, and that I had never gotten a chance to do, and I hadn't had a chance to talk really much about it from that before that, and so it was, man, you talk about emotional. I don't think I have been, well, I haven't. And that was the most emotional I've ever been in my life, was during that time. And it took a long time. And I asked my counselor, I said, no, I don't have that feeling that's there when I coach. And she goes, okay, well, that makes sense. I go, okay, so why does that make sense then? Why do you say that? And she goes, well, because how long have you been coaching? And I said, well, I don't know, probably 7 years, something like that, all told with different things. And she goes, well, you're comfortable in that role. You like helping kids. She goes, you need to be doing more of that now while you're going through this. Because I couldn't hold a job because there'd be days that I just really, most days, it was all I could do is get my son out the door to school. And then I was like a vegetable on the couch. And if it wasn't for my dad, my grandma, I wouldn't have made it through that. And my brother helped me out with my son some. So, there's definitely support that, helped me get through that.
Thank you for explaining that, Todd. If you were to connect with somebody and they have loved ones that have passed, and their response to counseling is, "It's just gonna make me more upset. I don't wanna go and deal with all those emotions." What would you tell them?
I would tell them that I understand where they're coming from first, and that I apologize and sorry for what they are going through. But in order to heal, you have to go back and go through all of those emotions and work those emotions through until you can truly move on. And if you don't, and you just push it away, because I think that's what I did, was push those feelings away. Eventually, it's going to come out. And I actually had a counselor tell me one time that you will have to deal with your emotions about the same age that the person was that died. And it was crazy because my mom was 30 years old when she died, and I was like 30, 31 when I dealt with things.
Wow.
So I'd never heard that before until now a few years ago.
Okay. If someone is struggling with the idea of a therapist in their personal ego and representation of themselves, what would you say to them?
Can you repeat that one again? Let me think about that.
I don't want to go to a therapist because I don't like the way it looks on my character or my personality. I'm strong. I don't need that type of stuff.
Okay. Okay, I got you. I would say, if you truly want to get better, it doesn't matter what other people think. It's about you and you getting better and better for your family members. And, it is confidential. Counseling is confidential. They can't say anything to you or about what your counseling is going through. And the other thing that I would do is if somebody's talking to me about that, I'm going to offer my support right there. Like, you know what? I'll help you any way I can. If you want me to drive you in my car so your car doesn't get seen at the counselor, whatever I can do to help, that's what I would do. And I would hope that they would have friends that would be, you know, open to know that, it's okay to go to counseling because that's where you're going to get the help, where you're going to be able to thrive later on in life.
Yes. So you did the work. Thank you for explaining that. And thank you for being transparent
You're
because I
welcome.
know these conversations are not easy. Sometimes you feel like you're right there. Sometimes it can be something you rattle off. I feel like right now is a mix of both of those for you. So thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
Thank you.
At what point, or should I say, what was the inspiration to start the CARES Foundation? And I know it was obviously your mom and sister, but what was the
Right.
catalyst at the moment you started to make that happen?
It was actually a gal in my youth group that I was helping out with at church. She was the very first person I'd talked to the youth group about my story, and she was the first person that asked me to go speak at her driver's training class. I went to her training class, and her dad was an elder in our church. But I went to speak at the driver's training class, and I spoke, and I had some kids crying, and I wasn't meaning for to make kids cry. And when it got done, the instructor, he goes, "You need to be talking about this all over the place." He said, "You have a powerful message." And I'm like, "Well, thank you," And I got done, and then a couple other kids later on, but it just kind of it was never, and that was before I knew what that feeling was before my counseling.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so yeah,
You
so I had
started this
never,
before doing the work for yourself.
yeah, I would talk about my
Okay.
mom, yeah. But it was more of it wasn't, I couldn't talk, I wasn't talking about my feelings because I didn't know what those feelings were quite yet.
That's fair.
So it was just on almost like a third person narrative where you're talking about somebody else, not necessarily
Mm,
yourself.
yes. That
Um,
fall has blocked a lot of that.
yeah, yep. And so yeah, that was that was probably the first time I ever felt like this is what I should be doing, and I didn't listen to that.
Okay.
Um, and so I tried to start it Cares Foundation probably, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. And I just wasn't in the right spot, right time,
If I
you know?
coulda, woulda, shoulda, those people
Absolutely.
always are the subject matter experts.
Yeah.
Always.
Can I share with you what gift my dad gave me in 2012?
Absolutely.
Okay. I got to get it here for a second. I bring this out when I talk to kids or whoever in a smaller area. It's harder in a bigger auditorium. But that that case that my dad said he had kept some of my mom's stuff.
Oh.
He kept my mom's purse
Aw.
that she had with her when she died.
Wow.
And I still, no matter how many times I pull it out, I get emotional because this is my mom's book. And this is the first time in 2012 that I got to see my mom's handwriting.
Oh, how beautiful.
And so she had a lot of different things in there. And um, she actually has, and I kind of laugh at this when I pull it out. She has the old 70s wallet. It's
Oh my gosh. Crushed is that what material is that out of?
like a velvet kind of material.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, crushed velvet, like, oh, I could
Yeah.
see the vest and the bell-bottom pants and something else with that all together,
Yeah.
like the whole outfit.
And my dad's pictures there, and she has pictures of the
Oh,
family in there. Actually, that's my sister.
okay. Oh,
Yeah. She even has I could probably get money out of this from TikTok or TikTok. She has a
I was gonna say,
full,
was there any money in the wallet?
I haven't dug like in the corners, but I'm sure there's probably some change in there somewhere. There's a toothpick I know. I was like, that's interesting. And she also had this. It's like a dowel. My dad had a construction company, so I don't know if she went and took this to go buy something for my dad for the construction
I have
company or what,
no
but it's
concept of what that
a
would have been
little
for.
piece of dowel. I don't know. I have no clue.
Right.
Um, but she had an empty Tic Tac like that, an empty one, but she has a full one too. It's like from 75. I could get something. There you go. I could
It's
get something out of
amazing
that.
how these appearance of minor things have such great value when they were the last things our loved one had.
Yeah, it's touched me big time. And like I said, when I pull it out, every time I get emotional, and I can't. I mean, it's just like I probably pulled this thing out probably, I don't know, 20, 30 times talking to people, and it still touches me because like the first time my dad showed it to me. So yeah, it was crazy. Sorry.
One, there is nothing to be sorry about. Two, it has been 49 years, and your emotions further confirm what I always tell people, grief has no timeline. It
Very
is
true.
not something you just get over and move on. You if you serve yourself well to learn how to go from, "I can't get out of the bed for a week," to, "I can't get out of the bed for the day." Your lamenting happens, but when we retract from society, it makes it different. I think the tears are necessary for us in society to remember that grief is part of this human journey. We should encourage other people who are in the throes of it.
Yeah, definitely. And now it's almost, I mean, I know it touches me, and when I do speak with and pull that out, but it also gives me, I don't know, it gives me, I keep coming back to that word closure, but it gives me peace, I guess, to know that I'm on the right road. And, like I said before, I'm a church believing individual, God believing individual, and God has just been routing me to different areas. I mean,
Mm.
like when I started this up, when I went down to Idaho to speak that first time that I talked about earlier, I didn't have the logo done yet. And that's when I ran into Donna. And while I was down there, I called my attorney up and said, "Hey," I said, "I'd like to get the 501(c)(3) paperwork going." And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "It's like a year to get that approved." And I'm like, okay. So I was down in Idaho for an additional week and filled the paperwork out, and she helped me submit it. And I was down there for an additional week and came up here back to Arizona. And I was here for about a week, and I got a letter from the IRS saying I was approved for the 501(c)(3). I'm
Wow.
like, that's crazy. And she goes, "Did you see that?" She like texted me like literally a minute after I'd opened up the letter. And I said, "Yeah, is that crazy?" She goes, "That is, I've never seen that." I said, "Well, I got a big guy upstairs working for me." And so she goes, "Oh, I got you." So there's God was just had his hands. And so things like that keep happening. And I mean, I keep running into people that, and not running into, and it's God definitely putting us together, because everybody that I like sit down, meet or whatever, my dad's, it's almost like a game to my dad, as far as he'll call me up. He goes, "Who did you meet this week?" So it's been interesting. Like, all right, God, who are you going to lead me to, and who am I going to be able to help, and
Right.
vice versa. It's just been interesting.
Wow. So let's get into, here are a few goals we have. I want to read the goal and I want you to share about some ways that you've been able to fulfill that. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
One, help save lives through speaking to as many teens and adults as possible.
So I will go anywhere, everywhere to speak. I'm headed to Oregon here in July to speak at a church Bible camp, about 100 students.
Okay.
Um, and I've gone to some different schools, not as many as I want to yet. It's a little harder to get into schools right now. I've spoke at different business meetings. I will go into an individual home if they have like teens, and invite their friends over.
Mhm.
I'll speak to them as well. And then I also have a table that I set up at events. Like I was at the YMCA, their Kids Day, and I sit up there, and I have drunk goggles. I don't know if you've seen those before or not. So they look just like ski goggles,
Okay.
but this one is, you put it on and it makes you act like you're 0.26 to 0.35 intoxicated,
Oh
and
my.
driving at night. And driving at night.
Oh, okay. That
So,
sounds
and I
like
have others
somebody
that,
with vertigo is not going to want to touch that.
no, most people see double when they put this on.
It sounds like something you mentioned. I want to circle back to something.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the drunk driver that was responsible for your mom and sister no longer being here. What became of him?
He I won't say his name, but he was 33 years old. He had 1.8 level is what his blood alcohol level was 1.8 at the time. He was hurt from what speaking to the first responder, he was cut like from the shoulder all the way down to his groin area.
Mm,
And that one of the things she said that was really difficult, that she had to put the drunk driver and my brother in the same ambulance. She goes, that was super difficult for her. After he took about, I think what I've been told, about 6 months to recover. And then he went to trial. He got 2 weeks in jail.
2 weeks?
2 weeks. Yeah. And, from my understanding, he was able to serve that on evenings or weekends. And he didn't do it in the first 6 months. So the judge gave him another 6 months to do it. And from what I'm told, it didn't even go on his driving record.
Mm,
He continued, his job was driving 18 wheelers, from what I've been told. And I guess at one point, somewhere where he was driving, he was drunk and somebody saw him and let his air out in his 18 wheeler, and the company fired him. And I found out when, I think it was about I don't know, sophomore in high school, something like that. I don't know, that he passed away from alcohol. So
mm.
he passed away young. And, a lot of people ask me like, well, are you so mad at him? And I'm like, back in the day, my brother and I wanted his name so we could go visit him, I mean, like, and thank goodness nobody did. And well, I found out he lived like 30 minutes from us, or
Wow.
grew up. And so I don't, I mean, back then, I guess you'd say I was upset with him. Now I've forgiven him for me to be able to move on.
Mm,
And I've actually want to start researching him a little bit to see what his life was. No, he may not have had a good chance at life. Who knows what his childhood was like, and stuff like that. So, I'm holding judgment on that. I don't want to judge anybody. And, I wished he would have made a better decision, of course, that day. And he got drunk in a little tavern that was like a half a mile from my grandmother's house. He drove by my grandmother's house.
wow.
Yeah.
So tell me, or tell us, about how it feels to have this foundation honoring your mom and your sister.
I Part of the time I can't even believe it's happening, you know, because I'm working on a shoestring budget, and I'm working at part time. And, but like I said, things just falling into place. It's just like, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. And the big goals that I have are going to happen. They are. It's just a matter of time. And and like I said, my dad's excited. I'm excited about who I'm going to meet next. I have no clue, as I go along. I mean, look at you and I. We met on a networking group, and here we
Yep,
are.
here we are. So you mentioned about some goals that you still need to fulfill. Goal number 2 is provide college scholarships to kids who have directly affected by drunk driving use, etc. Is that something you've been able to do or still looking to do?
Still looking to do.
Okay.
I'd like to at least have, you know, a couple of kids that I could provide scholarships to, and like $2,000 a year for all 4 years of the
Okay.
college.
Yeah.
So like 8 grand a piece. And if I got more funding, I'd just help more kids. So that's something that is in the hopefully the near future.
Okay. Another goal you mentioned is to host a summer camp for kids, which would include counseling and having fun being kids. Is that something
Absolutely.
you've
I'm
done
excited,
already?
baby.
Oh,
It's
you've done it
coming.
already?
No, it's coming
Okay.
though. I'm sorry. I'm excited about this one. I got to show you. Brochure
Oh, wow.
we got about 2 weeks ago. It's called Camp Cares, and we use the K. That's because that's the significant, of
Right.
my mama's sister. And so we put this together, and the complete flyer,
Nice.
and got the back here. And so we are going to be up in Globe, Arizona in June of 2025. So just about a year from now.
Right.
And we got getting it going. We're going to have 75 kids that have been affected by drugs or alcohol there. And then about 25, 30 volunteers. So I'm putting together a flyer right now for a student flyer for the camp. And then
Okay.
we've got a logo. I don't have it printed out yet, but I can kind of show you what it looks like. The theme of the camp is going to be Survivor. So we're kind of going off of, the Survivor from TV.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you can see that super well, but it's Survivor, and
Yes.
then it says
Yes.
Camp Cares, and then Thrive 2025.
Nice. How long
So
have you
we
been
are,
working for this to happen?
well, I've been wanting to do it for a long time, but as far as working and trying to get it going, probably for the last few months. And I went up and looked at the camp, and they're giving us a great deal. A friend of mine is going to bring some horses up there that are really, super tame, so the kids can be around horses.
Right.
Then I have another friend, a mutual friend of ours, Kaylee, from Unicorn Universe. She
Mhm.
is a kids therapist, trauma therapist. So one of the things I want to do, and the goal for this camp, is to give the kids some tools to help them in life. So we're going to give them those tools in the morning and the afternoon session, and then it's about having fun.
But
We're
the
the
evening
Survivor.
is
We're
the
gonna
turn up then.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do some different things like learn how to build a lean-to, maybe build fire without a match. Some of those things with Survivor, in the background. And we want these kids to thrive. Like I said, thrive 2025. I want these kids to be able to have a good time while we're there, learn some
Right.
things, build relationships with the adults, and then not only that, but when they leave and go back to their home, wherever that's at, a group home, they're with their mom and dad, whatever. I want to keep in touch with them, and we're working on that. Where it's either going to be a quarterly or every 6 months that we
Mhm.
get these kids back together
Oh,
and
wow.
just check in with them. So my hope is that these kids will be able to take something that we teach them and help their peers.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, it's exciting. I mean, and just to have the brochure. I mean,
It's
when I
coming
got that,
along.
I teared up when I got the brochure. I was like, really, Todd? But it is because it's coming true. It's going to happen. And the other thing is too, I've already talked to a friend of mine in Oregon, and we have ties in Idaho because I grew up in Idaho, to put camps in Oregon and Idaho. So my
Awesome.
goal, if I can get enough funding together, I really want to do this in every state. So that's a goal.
Unfortunately, there's room and a
Yeah,
necessity.
yeah. So I will add, if you know anybody listening, it's in the Arizona area that has a child that you know has been affected by drugs or alcohol and want to nominate them to go to the camp, give me a call. Let me know.
Nice. And what is your phone number or email address? How do the people reach you?
Okay. My telephone number is an Oregon number that I moved from. It's 541 490 5171. And my email is Todd, Todd, then cares with a K, Kares, F is in Frank at gmail.com. So Todd cares F at gmail.com.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If someone's thinking about starting a nonprofit, what advice would you give them?
Just go for it. I've had my own insurance agency at one point in life and helped out with other businesses. And honestly, this I think is the hardest thing I've done as a nonprofit. But a lot of people talk about it, and I did for years. I talked about it and didn't move on anything. And
You're
just
talking
do
about
it. Yeah,
starting one.
yeah, starting one. Yeah, just do it. Just get out there and go because you can learn as you go. I luckily had a great attorney that helped me through the beginnings of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as I've been networking, I'm running into people that have had experience and ask questions. Say, I'm doing this, trying to get this done. Have you had experience in that? And they're like, yeah. And I've even had now, I had people ask me, they're coming in the nonprofit, hey, how did you do that? I'm like, yeah, I didn't do that too long ago, kind of thing. So it's all about helping each other. If there was more of that in the world, we'd be way better off.
Wow. And it's very fresh in your mind. Are there any goals that are not on this sheet of paper?
I have one goal that we'd have to have the right backing and stuff. I would like to start up, and maybe it's on the paper, but a treatment facility
Yep, that's on there.
or
Nope, something else.
yeah. Okay. So it's on there. I don't know, things come through my head and if somebody come up with something and said, hey, what do you think about doing this? Let's do it. I'm
Okay.
all about, I'm not so set with this nonprofit that it has to be what I've thought of. It's like if other people come through and think of things,
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to pivot and try new things. And when it comes down to the very end of it is,
Mm-hmm.
are we helping the kids and are we
Mm-hmm.
saving lives? If
That
it
part
comes
right
into
there.
those two different things right there, I'm good for it. I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be coming up with the idea.
Right.
Um, it's just how we can execute it, how well we can execute it.
That makes sense. Are there any questions you have of me? I've asked you a lot of questions. I find sometimes people may or may not have a question for me. I want to give space for that.
Yeah, no, I really don't.
Okay.
I guess one thing I would like to, I put some notes and I went through some things last night and it was crazy going through things, how emotional I got with it as well. But when my dad, I'll go back to when I talked about my dad and him closing it in a box, kind of thing.
Right.
At that point, my mom's side of the family, we kind of just didn't
Disassociated.
have much to do with them. I got to see my grandmother and she lived an hour away from us once a year, Christmas time. I remember her making these gourmet chocolates, and we get a box of chocolates every year. My uncle, my mom's brother, lived 15 minutes from us, and I saw him I saw him every year, but not for us going over there and meeting up, but because they were a rival school of ours. And when I was in high school, I played basketball and football, and he would come to my games.
The universe would
Um,
not let you detangle.
right, and so I finally, and this was only about 6, 7 months ago, I was able to talk to him.
Wow.
Once in a while I talk to him, but I, uh, I asked him, I said, how come you guys like just left us? I felt like that side of the family, we didn't even have you anymore. And I said, what was that? And so he started to talk and he started crying. And my aunt, she goes, I'll talk. She goes, your uncle was really close to your mother. Your mother was like 8 years or something like that older than him. And
Mhm.
she was like a mother figure almost to him. And she
Mm,
goes, you probably don't know this, but she goes, when your mom, back then, they talked every day. They called each other and said, hey,
mm.
how's your day? And so
On
they
this
were super
long cord
close.
of the phone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep, yep. So they were super close. And so that's why it hurt every time that he saw us and had something to do with us. So it goes right back to that same attitude and that counseling's not good and buck up buttercup kind of thing. That's what they did. And that's what everybody did at that time. So yeah, so if anybody deals with that, just fight through that. I mean,
Yes.
I never got the chance to talk to my grandmother about my mom. So I was 18 years old and
Oh my
I was going to
gosh.
be going to college.
Mhm.
And I talked to my grandma because I had gotten hired by Bureau of Land Management to fight fires in the summertime.
Oh wow.
And I talked to my grandmother and I said, hey, I said, I have fire school down there in Boise. I said, would it be okay if I come down there while I was going to fire school and then give me a chance to talk to you about mom? She goes, oh, absolutely. That'd be great. Well, my grandfather was in the hospital with terminal cancer.
Mm.
And I guess my mom or my grandma was having some chest pains and did not tell the family about it, told her sister, but made her sister promise not to say anything.
Uh,
And my grandmother had a massive heart attack and died like 2 or 3 days later. And
mm,
I never had the opportunity to ask my grandma any question about my mom. That was a
mm.
killer because that was like my link to know my mom,
Right.
you know. Yeah. Never had that opportunity. But
But here you are showing up for your mom and sister in their honor with other people.
yeah, by a lot of people's help and God being over me because I was mad at God for a period of time and I didn't go to church, didn't do anything
Oh, please
because
talk
like
about that because I believe people don't understand the gravity of the pain and that God is big enough to carry that pain as we work through it. People feel like, oh, they said they were mad at God. Who else were you mad at? I mean, let's
I was
be
mad at everybody.
honest. Right, but
I was
people don't say
yeah,
that, and if you don't admit it, I think it's hard for you to learn how to continue living if you don't own the fact that you're upset.
yeah, I agree with you. I was like I said before, I know I probably hurt in fact I know I hurt a lot of people and I apologize for that. And but during those times and when I these things kept happening to me and getting divorced and I didn't want that at all and things like that. I never saw myself that way. It hit me. And it's like during that time, I'm like, you know what? There is no God. And I was just
Mm,
saying to myself, there is no God. He's not out there. But yet I knew in the background because those times that I could not work, my, my son was in what junior high,
mhm.
or maybe a little bit younger than that. But something happened every month that I was able to pay the rent. I had food on the table.
Your needs were met.
Yeah, they were. And God tells us that, your needs will be met. And so
Mm,
right then at that point, I learned as I think back now, probably not in the moment, but I think back now, like, man, that's where God was teaching me that he's going to take care of my needs.
wow.
And, I was a good dad as far as, I was there for him, but I was there, but I wasn't there. I was present, but I may not have been always acting like I was present because of everything that I was going through. And I
Right.
feel bad about that. And, as much as I was mad at God,
Mhm.
I think it was that anger inside that I was turning it to somebody. Somebody had to feel because I was that angry. And so, that's why I feel it was God. And I've gotten closer to God now in the last few years than any time, really. Than maybe when I was younger. So yeah, if anybody doesn't know God, open up a Bible, just read something. You don't have to go to church immediately. God wants us to go to church to be able to minister and worship together. But just open it up or give me a call, man. I'll pray for you. And so
What does it mean that you make the statement to know God? What does that mean? What does that look like? If
I
I'm hearing this
think
for the first time and you're mentioning God knowing and all this stuff and that's foreign to me, what are you trying to articulate to somebody?
I guess I'm trying to say is if you have ever had a relationship with someone that is like just wonderful and they lift you up every time that you're with them,
Mhm.
getting to know God that way by reading the Bible, knowing that he died on the cross for our sins, and that if we believe in him that we can go to heaven
Okay.
and have everlasting life, then it's like, you know what? It's there, and it's it's a renewing when you give your life to Christ. It's like you're getting a new heart. It's a just an awesome feeling. And so, you know, I had that feeling when I was younger and probably lost a little bit. And I've gotten that feeling back again. And, like I said, with this, God is directing this and, I'm the vessel that he's using. It's just like I said, crazy on how I'm being led through this and by others or people that I'm meeting. And it's crazy because everybody I meet's like, oh yeah, God's number one. And it's like, and and we are definitely faith based, but we also respect other religions. I don't
Okay.
judge anybody. Your beliefs are your beliefs. That's great. But this is what I believe and the way I feel.
Okay. You said you had notes and things there. I want to. Is there something in your notes that we didn't cover? Make sure we do.
I kind of went through everything. I have 9 pages of
Oh
dictated
my
notes.
gosh, Todd. Okay, one, low key, I'm kind of feeling good about this conversation that we covered everything on 9 pages. But okay, because this was not a scripted conversation. I know what you probably said, what are the questions? Like, I kind of just go through what the conversation, I feel like it leads itself because the
Yeah,
person that is listening, they want to know like what it would be like if they're part of the conversation.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
if someone is listening to this podcast and their loved one was taken from this world because of the hands of somebody else, and they are mad and they are bitter and they hate the world because their person is not here. What
Yep.
would you tell them?
First, I'd say I'm sorry, and they probably heard that lots of times. But the first thing I would say is, what can I do for you? Because they probably already had people that say, hey, you need to quit being angry. You need to quit this and that. I just want to say, how are you? Truly, how are you? And what can I do to help? And if it's go for a drive, go sit down and talk somewhere, tell me how you're feeling because I'm sure what you're feeling, I've felt before
Okay.
because of that same losing somebody. And, and so, I mean, it's for me, it was even looking at a family, and I still do it to this day. You see a family with a husband and wife and the kids, I'm like, man, I wonder what it'd be like to have my mom,
Right.
And so I would just be there for that person. And that's what I think that's what the biggest mistake for a lot of people when they come in someone that needs something is they want to fix it right immediately. And you can't unless the person's ready to fix themselves. If they're ready to fix themselves, then you can help them, but just be there for them in
Mhm.
the meantime till they're ready for that help.
That is so important. And I think that is also what makes people very uncomfortable being around people who are lamenting, grieving, and deep sorrow because this is an unfixable situation.
Yeah.
And the reality that we all have to travel this way makes
Yeah.
it very difficult for people to just be there. And it seems like just being there, but that is the biggest thing that you can do to be present and let them cry, let them be upset, and let them be in their feelings. I think that is great advice.
And the a big word when I was going through my thoughts last night and I was dictating and stuff, and perseverance was a word that
Mm,
kept coming up to me. And all the things that I've been through in my life, I had thyroid cancer in 2018 and had half my thyroid out and lost what money I did have. And so, I'm starting fresh and new again. But it's like perseverance. That's, I guess, if my girlfriend would ask me, what is the key one word that just sums you up? It's perseverance. I've never stopped. Has it held me back? Absolutely. But I keep persevering through things. And I would never imagine where Harris Foundation is to this day, and so, just keep on trucking. And like I said, you got my telephone number out there, everybody out there. And I give kids my cell phone every time I speak to somebody. They will have my cell phone. And these kids I talk to, I said, call me. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone's on. As long as I hear it, I will answer the telephone.
wow.
And because there's some parents out there that are so rigid that if the kids were in trouble, the kids are afraid to call their own parents for help.
Okay.
And so I will, if I have these kids call me, I'll say, I'll be the buffer. Now, are your parents going to know? Absolutely, they're going to know. You're an underage individual. You shouldn't be drinking it or doing something else in the first place.
Right.
But I will call the parents and, talk to them and I'll be the buffer.
Mm,
And I will say, I'm glad they called. They're getting help. They're safe. But if they're afraid to call, it might be a knock on the door from an officer saying, hey, your son or daughter, I'm sorry to tell you, is either killed or they're in jail.
you
You
don't
know,
want that.
um, You don't want that at all. So that's what I give this out to the kids. It's like, every one of my cards, I have the CARES Foundation on the front, and the back of it has all my information and my personal cell phone number. That's in
But
fact
it's
the
a
541.
combination of the names, but it also is because you do care.
Absolutely.
It is the combination of all of that.
Yep. And I've had two people that have been alcoholics call me on my phone, and one I talked through and got their sponsor on the phone,
Okay.
and the other one I just got to talk, and she told me her story. And she actually was recovering at the time, but she saw my website and she called
Okay.
me. And so that was a wonderful, touching, and important story that she had
Wow.
or has.
You just made me think of something. So besides those two, do you have any other memorable stories where you've been able to show up for people and support them in this foundation that comes to mind, one or two?
I think over the years, just talking with the kids, that,
Okay.
you don't, when you talk to kids and they get emotional about it, but you may not hear from them again. Now you may run into them again. So
Right.
I've I've been told I've had impact, but I haven't had a specific
Okay.
incident yet that said, hey, you really whatever. I mean, so I haven't, unfortunately, had somebody come back yet. But I haven't been doing this as far as the actually built for just a couple years. But
Okay.
um, so yeah, so that, unfortunately, but I know that I'm making a difference because I'm told that when I speak and everything.
Yes.
Um, and so, but no, I'm looking forward to when that person does come back, like a teacher, they come back
Right.
to the teacher and say, hey, I'm looking forward to that, and just looking forward to having these kids at this camp hopefully come back and help other kids.
Beautiful. Todd, thank you so much for being here. There are going to be people listening to this conversation that have traveled down a similar road where their grief is complicated and they feel like nobody cares. And yet they will know that you do and that they are not alone. I would ask you to wrap up this conversation and have the closing comments.
Okay, thank you. Well, I tell anybody that's out there that's going through anything like this or having some difficulties right now, that key word that kept coming up to me is perseverance. Keep driving forward. And you know what? You have a friend, and I don't care where you're at, who you are. You got my cell phone number. Call me. If I don't answer it, I'm doing something else. Leave me a message. I will call you back. So I'm here for you. And, I've got some resources of counselors that I can get other resources in other places on my website. There's actually some resources there. So reach out to me. Love to hear from you. And again, the nonprofit, we're always needing funding. It's $300 a child to sponsor a child for the camp. So, but I appreciate you, and thank you so much, Tina, for allowing me to come on and share my story. You're doing a great work, and I look forward to see where it's taken you and taking me as well.
Thank you. You have a good day.
All right. Thank you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.